Hello, welcome to the Better Outcomes Show, where we explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. Each episode, we bring you a conversation with leaders across the healthcare industry, exploring topics ranging from new treatment techniques and interventions to novel service delivery methods and business models. And now your host, Rafi Salazar from Rehabilitation Practice Solutions, a leader in patient engagement and retention strategy. Let's explore the possibilities of a new healthcare.
Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Better Outcomes Show. I'm your host, Rafi Salazar from Rehabilitation Practice Solutions, where we deliver the ultimate patient experience blueprint, which helps healthcare organizations improve patient engagement, retention. I basically tell people that we help our clients attract, acquire, engage, and retain more patients. So if that's something you'd be interested in, you can head on over to rehabilitationpracticesolutions.com/UPE for ultimate patient experience. Learn more about that. But enough about that. What do we have on the docket this week? This week, we're taking a little bit of a break from technology, from treatment interventions and techniques, and even research, and we're diving into the business side of healthcare, particularly mergers, acquisitions. I know many of the people that listen to this show and many of the people that I've had conversations with after episodes either own a practice or are thinking about owning a practice or manage a practice, manage a firm. And the idea of what happens when I'm ready to retire or take the next step to grow the business and I need some capital, how do I do that? Tends to be an issue that comes up, and as clinicians turned entrepreneurs or business owners, oftentimes we don't have a lot of that mindset or even education and training about it. So I decided to reach out to some folks, and we got on the show this week Mike Pekatowski. It's never something easy like John Smith, right? Mike's a great guy. He's a physical therapist by trade and training, and he'll tell you a little bit about working his way up through the ranks at some big facilities and ended up doing some mergers and acquisitions. And now he is an M&A advisor, a merger and acquisition advisor at a firm called 8150 Advisors. And they basically help on the buy side and the sell side for setting up, on the physical therapy side primarily, purchases and mergers for folks that are either looking to expand their practice or exit a practice and all of that. So we talked a little bit about just the general lay of the land. What's the normal and typical market look like for physical therapy mergers and acquisitions? How many deals get done in a given year? That sort of thing. We talked a little bit about how some of the recent past, mainly being COVID, and how that affected the healthcare industry in general, how that affected some of the landscape for mergers and acquisitions. And then we spent a good bit of time talking about what physical therapy clinic owners can do to build value in their business to not only increase the multiple that they can receive when they sell out, but just make their business more attractive to a potential buyer. A lot of times, again, as clinicians turn business owners, we're trying to deliver high quality care, and that's part of it, but there are other key pieces that need to be put in place to make sure that any kind of transition, whether it be to recapitalize and get bigger or to completely exit, sell the business and exit, to make sure that transition happens smoothly. Some of that involves making sure you've got a good management team in place, making sure you've got the billing operations squared away, making sure you've got operations in general, clinical operations, running as tight as they can. So Mike gave a good deal of information and insight about how we can do that as business owners, as clinic owners, to position our practices for an eventual sale or merger or acquisition down the line. One of the things that he said that kind of stuck with me was if you think about when you want to retire, you want to begin or exit your business, you want to begin making the steps or planning for that 3 to 5 years before you actually want to do it. And I think that there are, I know that doing the work that I do with practices and practice owners, that many times it is the year they want to retire, and then they're thinking about how to exit. And they obviously there are steps that have been missed, or there's just pieces that haven't been put in place, or that would have made them more money when they sold the business that just weren't there because they weren't planning that far ahead. So hopefully this conversation is insightful and interesting on the side of just seeing what the market is, what the landscape is out there for mergers and acquisitions. And then hopefully you'll walk away with some practical and concrete steps that you can take in your own practice or your own organization to build that long-term value to eventually make you more desirable as either a merger partner or an acquisition down the line. So without further ado, here's Mike Pekatowski talking about mergers and acquisitions primarily in the rehab space. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, Rafi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. For those that might not know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of a brief bio of your work in the rehab space, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure thing. So my name is Mike Pekatowski. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I worked in the clinic for 10 years as a staff therapist, clinic director, those kinds of things. Got into management and started managing about 20 centers in the Western Pennsylvania market. Did that for a few years and got an opportunity to get into some consulting work, and was working with hospitals to help them develop their musculoskeletal service lines for quite some time. And because my background in physical therapy was pulled into any of the hospitals we were working with that had questions about outpatient rehabilitation, which we quickly learned was most, if not all of them. And so eventually I ended up developing a niche product line within that consulting firm that worked exclusively with hospitals and health systems, outpatient rehabilitation programs. We'd assess and then consult with them and how to improve performance. It's there where I started to get some information and work on some projects where some hospitals were interested in purchasing some practices nearby, and so I started to learn the mergers and acquisition game, with that experience. And fast forward a couple years later, got an opportunity to go back with one of the companies that I worked for previously, and as a vice president and managed about 60 locations in Western PA and Eastern Ohio. And at the time, that company was called Physio. At the time, they were looking to get back into the merger and acquisition game. They didn't really have anyone that had any experience with it. The combination of my consulting experience and some of the M&A work that I was doing as a consultant, gave me the opportunity to step into that role with a national company and a national stage. And fast forward almost 8 years later, it started out with Physio doing the M&A work. Also, Physio got acquired by Select Medical, so I was there for several years. And I was most recently with Phoenix Physical Therapy, helping them with their M&A processes as well. Which brings us to today. Most recently, I've partnered with 8150 Advisors out of Vail, Colorado, and that firm helps advise clients who are interested in selling their practices and need help getting through the process. So we have myself and Steve Stalzer, who's my partner, and Steve, had a large practice he sold. to one of the consolidators back in 2015, and has experience as a seller and as through his consulting work on the sell side. I have the experience on the buy side, and between the two of us, we make a pretty good team, and kind of how the process works, what everyone's looking for, the key contacts at various companies. And it's been going extremely well since we partnered earlier this year. And we're going to close quite a few deals this year, as we partnered up. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the background. That's a wide array of experience there. But it brings us to the mergers and acquisitions space, specifically like in the rehab industry and people buying and selling practices. Just given kind of what you've said, it sounds like there's a lot of activity in the M&A space in rehab, correct?
Yeah. So, just if you were to just go, rewind a year ago, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and a lot of the processes were paused. So kind of what happened is you had a lot of backlog in deals and people that were interested in selling that until the pandemic kind of panned out a little bit more, a lot of buyers weren't sure exactly what they wanted to do. And so I think you got this pent up demand, both in the buyers and sellers. And then we also have some factors with potential tax changes with capital gains tax kicking in next year, which is incentivizing some folks who are a little bit on the fence selling to maybe consider trying to sell this year as well. So you got two factors that I think are making this a little bit more active, at least in the short term here, than we typically see. On an average year, you'll probably see, somewhere around 30 deals a year. A big year will be 40 or maybe even slightly north of 40 across the industry. And we're probably going to, in a short period of time here, be in that pace, that 40 plus pace for at least for the next several months here.
Yeah. And so we've kind of touched a little bit on the buyers wanting to sell, acquirers wanting to buy. Like, could you lay out some reasons why? Let's just start on the seller side. Like, why might a seller want to sell other than retiring?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously retiring is the easiest one, but I would encourage anyone who even has a thought of selling the practice to really walk through their plan many years out before you're actually interested in doing the transaction. It would not be a bad idea to start planning that 5 years prior to your exit. The reason being, a lot of buyers are interested in the sellers staying on for a period of time afterwards. So you want to factor that in. It doesn't necessarily need to be a lifetime commitment at that point, but you definitely are going to be encouraged to stick around. That your practice has a lot more value if you're willing to stay around for some time. I mean, the other factors that I hear a lot from sellers today is, payers can be difficult to deal with in certain markets. Just the amount of back office activity. People see you in the clinic and you're treating patients and running a successful business, but they don't realize that after the lights go out, you're going back and running payroll and managing the back end of the business as well, on nights and weekends. And so, it gets to be a grind for some folks, particularly when they're at that level of a practice where they're kind of on that cusp between a small practice and a medium-sized practice, and they the back end office functions start to become a lot more significant chunk of the time that they need to work on every day.
Yeah. Where would that break be for you? Like where you're someone that's on the cusp of being small versus medium? Is it number of clinics? Is it revenue, visits?
It's probably a little bit of both. There's no one size fits all, but once you're getting over $1 million in revenue, and 2 or 3 locations, that you start to get to that area where sometimes the back office is going to start to really pick up in terms of, because you have a lot larger staff now, and you have more things to manage, more balls to juggle on a daily basis. So, somewhere in that realm, you got to start thinking, do I need another partner to help me continue to grow? Do I need to expand further? So, and take on a loan or take on a financial sponsor, or partner up with a larger organization that'll help me continue to expand in this market. So there's some interesting questions start to pop up around that level, and so it's everyone's it's an individual decision for everyone, but ultimately you'll hit that point where I think most people will remember that point where, man, this is a lot of work. I'm spending 80 hours a week, and maybe 30 or 40 hours is treating patients, but another 30 or 40 hours just making sure the business is flowing properly. So that's the spot where people start to get a little burned out.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the seller side. How about the buyers? What might motivate a buyer in a market? Is it more strategic, like they're wanting to branch into maybe an untapped market for them, or is it kind of just like a revenue growth thing for shareholders and that sort of thing?
Well, it depends on what the buyer's motivation is. We got several different kinds of buyers out there, but they're all ultimately lump into a couple key areas. One is they'll look to continue to expand in markets they're currently in. We call those like tuck-ins or acquisitions that will complement the geographies that they're already in. And the other main approach is the land and expand approach, where you buy a practice in a new market and then look to expand in that market. 2 very different approaches, and it will take 2 different types of buyers that are capable of pulling those off. But that's generally the 2 buckets that they're in. In all cases, they're generally looking to grow their business, expand in markets and grow not only the financial side of it, but looking to expand and deliver quality care and services in markets that they feel that they can improve the overall customer experience.
Yeah. Just is my own curiosity here. Does that affect valuation either way, depending on which type of buyer you're dealing with?
Absolutely. So certain buyers, a certain type of practice may be more attractive to certain buyers. So that's really that's where having an advisor may be strategically advantageous to a seller, because we keep in touch with these buyers all the time, and we know kind of where they're interested in going, and so sometimes it's just lining up the needs of the buyer and the needs of the seller. But ultimately, if you can get a buyer who's extremely interested in a particular market or a particular type of practice or whatever, and you can line them up, they're going to be a little bit more aggressive in their valuation there, just because it's an important strategic acquisition for them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about kind of what's affected the market, COVID and the pandemic and coming out of that and this pent up frustration. Any other factors that are affecting kind of either the buy or the sell side?
I think those are the main drivers that we're seeing right now. I mean, I guess there's one other factor out there. We got you have ATI out there who just recently went public, and so that is causing some reverberations in the market. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. In the last few days upcoming to this podcast, the share price has dropped about 60%.
Yeah.
So that will have some impact in the market. I think it's a short-term impact, but because it appears what's happening there is very local to ATI, but at the end of the day, that idea of going public is something that to this point you only have USPH, ATI now, and Select in that public arena. So it'd be interesting to see if more buyers start to go down that path. And then I don't know if you've recently noticed, but Upstream also made a big acquisition this week, and so of results. And so that gives them over 1,000 locations across the U.S. And so now you got some players in the market who are adding locations and expanding their business in new markets and complementary markets that are going to give them a little bit more economies of scale and some things that allow them to potentially look at things like going public, or it depends on what their interest level is, or what their 5-year plan is and where they want to go. But those things will have some impact in the market as we continue to go forward as well.
Yeah. No, I noticed the share price for ATI dropping. It's gonna be interesting how that all works out over the next several years. But you mentioned at the beginning, you recommended that practice owners, regardless of where they're at in their stage, start thinking about having their eye on the exit, 3, 4, maybe 5 years out from that. What concrete steps should a practice owner take before they're even thinking about selling? Are there, is it back office things that we're looking at squaring away? Is it process of care or combination? What are the big steps that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, first and foremost, you got to get your house in order. So that is delivering great care, and setting up your team around you so that you can maximize your ability to deliver great care across all the locations or within the house that you're currently operating out of. So that is the cornerstone of any successful therapy practice, and that is truly what the buyers that I'm working with. That's a basic. If that's not even there, they're not going to be interested. So delivering great care for sure is number one. Now you got to the second phase of that is delivering great care in a in a financially successful model that works for your market. Not all models will work in all markets, and buyers recognize that. So there is variation in how someone might operate in California versus the way someone may operate in Pennsylvania, and that's okay. At the end of the day, buyers understand that those markets are very different, but you have to have a system that can deliver great care and do it in a financially successful way. And then once you're, the finances are getting to a point where you're starting to see positive returns on a consistent basis. Now you're ready to start to understand, what is a practice like mine worth? And how can I make it worth more? If I'm looking to sell in 5 years, what are the steps that I need to take in order to make my business worth more to a potential buyer, or those, I think that's kind of the next phase, and that the answer to that is very different for everyone. There may be some things that you need to look at from from a billing perspective, from a staffing perspective, from just a general operations perspective that will add value. But some of the key steps are generally going to be developing good leaders within your organization, having that great staff around you is going to be critical, and developing those folks within, because if you're going to exit and you have a plan, let's say you have a plan of you'd like to exit and work a year and then retire, we have to have a good number two lined up and ready to go at that point, to really have a good successful transition. So some of that again is going to depend on what your goals are upon exit. If you want to sell and stick around, that's an easy sell to a buyer, because that's something all buyers are looking for. If you want to sell but then transition a year or two later, that's you're going to have that good number two that's capable of running the business when you're ready to step away. So developing that bench strength is going to be critical, and then just understanding the various understanding how the valuation works. So at that point, it'd be a good idea to have a simple appraisal of your practice, understand what that appraisal might look like, and what are the areas of opportunity. You have an experienced eye look at those numbers, and you can say, look, your staffing's a little high, or your reimbursement's a little low for this market, and those are things that you could start to look at, and there are probably some simple steps that you can take to tweak how you deliver your current model that will deliver the same or better, yet in a more financially beneficial way. And so there are, and I just pull those two examples out because those are some of the bigger triggers, but there's probably 15 or 20 other things that you can be looking at as well that will deliver similar types of results. So at the end of the day, you're looking to maximize value in your practice. So now you have, an idea of when you want to exit. You have an idea of who the team is around you and what their capabilities are. You have an idea of what your practice is worth, and you have, kind of an end game ready to go. If I need, now it becomes a question of, okay, I would like to exit, and I think I'm going to need X amount of dollars to exit. So now you have an end game to work towards. Okay, I need to build my practice to this number so that I have a reasonable chance of getting the money that I need out of this practice when I'm ready to sell. And so that might take another year or a year and a half, or maybe even 2 years to get to that goal. And so, there are things, that's why starting early, I always say at least 3 years out, but more likely 5 years out is probably when you want to start looking at this. And then, start going through the steps. If you need help, work with somebody that can help you. But at the end of the day, you'll be able to really project out, if I want to leave in 5 years, this is, generally what I can expect if I'm able to hit these numbers. And then once you start to hit those numbers, now it's time to start having some conversations with some potential buyers. That whole process itself can take 6 months to a year once you've committed to selling your practice. It's not, like you put put the for sale sign out and it's sold 2 days later. There's a lot of work behind selling your practice. It is a process, generally minimum 6 months from the day you put it to market to when you sell it. More likely it's going to be between 6 and 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that overview. So for practice owners and moving in this direction, we're trying to maximize value. We're trying to increase what we'll end up getting, whether it be a multiple or however we're going to cash out on the exit. What are some of those major metrics then that practice owners should be looking at? Or is it a combination of objective metrics and qualitative assessment that we should be kind of gearing towards as we keep that eye on an exit?
Yeah. So the main metric that almost all evaluations in the physical therapy space are based off of is going to be your adjusted EBITDA. That's earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, amortization. There are several, courses at PPS and various opportunities out there where you can get an idea of what that number is for you. If you're working with an accountant, they should be able to help you a little bit. But you really, because our space is so specialized, it's getting someone with some experience in our space to help you understand what your specific number is might be a good idea for you. And so, there are several folks like myself who will do that for you. And again, at that point, you're just looking at to understand what that number is and get to, in today's market, what is the range of multiples that might be applied to that adjusted EBITDA. There are other factors other than EBITDA that affect that multiple. It will be the size of the practice, the number of locations, where those locations are, the payer environment in that market, the infrastructure of your business. Do you have that number 2 and you're looking to get out a year from now? Those are all factors that a potential buyer are going to look at and add some value or detract some value from a multiple that you might get off of that adjusted EBITDA. And so at the end of the day, there's a plethora of factors that could influence a final multiple, but you could certainly get a pretty good idea of what range you're going to be in, given the characteristics of your business at any point in time. And again, that snapshot will also identify, what are some of the factors, what are some of the things that you might be able to work on that would improve the value of your business, over the next 6 or 12 months. And, sometimes, again, some of those are very simple things that you can work on and accomplish in a couple of weeks. Some of them take a year to really implement and do well within an organization. So, at the end of the day, there are multiple factors that will finally impact that multiple. But everything's based off of what is that adjusted EBITDA. That's the starting point.
Yeah. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's, in this market, we're selling it, 3 or 4 times EBITDA. That's going to be whatever the EBITDA is, 3 or 4 times that. That'll be the range that you can roughly expect to sell the practice. And then you're saying, depending on whether it's a strategic acquisition or whether or not you don't have the infrastructure in place, that'll affect it up or down, right?
Correct. So let's say in a market that it's between a 3 and a 5, with 4 being the average in that particular market. Now, if you are not a particularly strong financial practice, well, you're going to be dipping below that 4. If you want to leave, retire right away and don't have a number 2, well, you might not even be attractive. You might not even get an offer at that point. So those are some some ways to kind of think of it, and it's a very general way, and it's not that simple, but that would be a way to think of it. And then that same market that's a 4, but that particular practice is very successful, is clearly the market leader in 1 or 2 of the markets that they operate in, have great relationships with referral sources. All of a sudden that particular practice, that's going to start to go up, above that 4 mark, and closing in on that 5 mark. So, that's kind of a simple way to look at it, but yeah, I mean, if your average is 4 in that market for an average practice, and then they start looking at some of these other factors, it can move you up or down that dial.
Yeah. How much of that is in the owner's control versus like just the timing of the market versus like the geography there? Like they might land some big player in the game who really wants to be in their geographical market, right?
It's like anything. Timing is everything with anything, but that's only one factor. But right now the market is, there are so many consolidators looking to buy good practices that, in the current environment, the metrics are very favorable. And so, you'll be able to have conversations with multiple buyers. If you're, an average to above average practice, you're going to have several interested suitors in any particular market today. Now, 6 months from now, let's say the Delta variant kicks in and COVID's all, happening all over again, and it may start to dry up a little bit. It's hard to say. That's the timing variant that we'll never be able to truly predict. But in general, markets where large consolidators either want to be and they don't have a presence are attractive, or where they already have a presence and are looking to, like I said, tuck in practices that complement their geography, or bring in a different practice type, or bring in different referral sources than they currently have. Those are very attractive to buyers as well.
Yeah. Now I know we talked a little bit about owners staying on for a year and all that. When it comes to the actual deal structure, like on average, is there a lot in the way of like earnouts in the way those deals are structured, or is it really a lot of the whole cash is up front and then there's just this agreement that you're sticking on? Like, how does that typically shake out for the owners?
Yeah, so earnouts are very common in the physical therapy world. So if you think of it from a buyer's perspective, the buyer's identifying something that may have a small, some kind of risk that associated with buying that practice. And they're quantifying, saying, okay, there's a little bit of risk here. We'd like to do the deal, but if we can share a small percentage of the purchase price in mitigating that particular risk, it's usually some kind of financial risk, where there's a risk of revenue dropping or efficiency dropping over a short period of time. And so, an earnout is a vehicle that a buyer may suggest to say, I'll pay you, and I'm just going to use round numbers, $1 million for your practice, but I'd like 10% of that in an earnout. So $100,000 would be in an earnout. And that can be structured a lot of different ways. Sometimes, most of the times, it's some kind of financial metric. If you can maintain a certain level of revenue, a certain level of EBITDA, certain number of visits, then we're comfortable paying the rest of that over. And usually it's a year or two post close. So, an earnout is a structure that is used often. I'd say, the early deals after the pandemic, because there was so much variability in visit volume,
Yeah.
and you didn't have a good 12 months of data to look at. So, and during those times, an earnout was a good vehicle, if the seller's confident that they can deliver, the business at the level that the most recent trend is showing. Then the buyer is very willing to pay the full multiple, but they just got to make sure that that the visits aren't going to dry up, or the revenue or EBITDA isn't going to dry up as you transition out of COVID. So what we're seeing is, if it's a well-run practice, we're seeing some earnouts, but we're seeing less of that as we get away from COVID, and buyers are more comfortable with with the market conditions today.
Yeah. Cool deal. Well, we're getting near the end here. If there's just one or two main points you'd want a buyer, or not a buyer, a seller or a practice owner to walk away from, Mike, what would they be?
To walk away from?
Well, to walk away from this episode from.
Oh, sorry.
What do you want them to walk away from? Being like, oh, Mike really taught me that.
Yeah. So start the process early,
Okay.
as early as you possibly can. The more you understand about the process, the better position you'll be when you move to exit. And so that to me is the key. Get help if you're not sure how to do some of the financial stuff and understand the metrics in the business. I mean, some people are very, very good at it, and some people, they're clinicians first and don't understand some of the financial or operational metrics so well. Get help. If you get somebody that can help you improve upon those, it might just be 2 or 3 points, but that could make a significant, you could get a significant return when you're ready to exit. And then finally, probably the other key piece is always have good people around you. Develop your people, deliver that great quality care, because that will be, again, that is going to be the most attractive piece to any buyer as you move forward.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks for taking the time. Where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more about 8150?
You can go to our website at 8150advisors.com. My direct email, if you want to reach out to me, is mikep@8150advisors.com. And, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
All righty. Well, thanks for being on the show, Mike.
Thanks, Ralphie. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mike Pekatowski on mergers and acquisitions in the physical therapy space. I know as someone who is involved in healthcare consulting and the marketing side of things, it's nice to get a little bit more background and insight onto the buy-sell side of the world. I'm a big fan of people like Mike, who both value the operational metrics, who understand the numbers very well, but even as he said at the very end there, the ultimate value builder in the business is delivering that high quality care, which is something that all clinicians can wrap their head around and understand, right? I think, again, I've reiterated this at the beginning, but I think it bears saying again, and Mike made mention of it before as well, at the very end here, we need to begin planning early, and we need to have the plan in place, or the roadmap in place for what happens next. What's the next stage of this clinic, of this business? Because if you don't have things squared away, I think very, very much on the Jim Rohn quote, the destination determines direction. And if you don't have that destination in mind, if you're just kind of taking it year by year, you're going to get nowhere, right? So, but if you know that you're going to be looking to exit, or you're going to be looking at taking on a partner, or maybe even making an acquisition yourself, that understanding of the ultimate direction, or that goal, that destination, will inform the decisions you make as a business owner, as a clinic manager, the people that you hire, the people that you don't hire, the strategic moves you make insofar as service offerings or expansion and the like. I think another thing that he mentioned that we've talked about here on the show a bit was about the people that you surround yourself with as a business owner, as a manager. A lot of times, again, as clinicians turn entrepreneur, clinician turn business owners, the training and education and sometimes even the skill set around hiring and developing staff is not something that many folks are born with or trained with. Maybe if you've worked through as a staff clinician somewhere and you've kind of risen through the ranks and become a manager and been placed in a position where you need to coach and mentor staff and train up future leaders in an organization, you've got a better handle on it. But it's something to be very intentional about. I know we had the doctor that started Build Your Own Team or Build Your Team here on the show several episodes ago, and he talked about some of those soft skills or some of those non-technical skills that really make healthcare workers shine, or makes the healthcare workers that are superior. And a lot of that can be trained or developed in staff, both in the culture that you set at your organization and the specific things that you seek to incentivize on their part. So thinking back again about the hires that you've made or that you're going to make, the kind of culture you want to develop at your facility, and then how that's going to translate into the ultimate end user of your service, which is the patient. So that's all I've got to say about that. If you like the show, head on over to iTunes. You can leave us a rating and review. Or you can head on over to www.betteroutcomes.show. There you can find the backlog of all the episodes that we've released to date. You can sign up to get new episodes delivered straight to your inbox. And you can even reach out to us, ask us a question. We might read it on the show here. You never know. And if you are a business owner, a clinic owner or administrator, and you want to develop a system that helps you attract, acquire, engage, and retain more patients, if you want your patients to do your marketing for you, if you want them to show up to their appointments, if you want them to finish their courses of care, complete their course of care, then check out the Ultimate Patient Experience Blueprint, where we will help you do just that. You can learn more about that at www.rehabupracticesolutions.com/UPE. That's rehab, the letter U, practicesolutions.com/UPE. Until the next time, everyone, be safe, be healthy. I will talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to the Better Outcomes Show, where we explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. Our hope is that you walk away from each episode informed, equipped, and empowered to push the boundaries in your own practice or business. We want to give you the tools to help you build strong, long-lasting relationships with your patients and clients, helping meet their goals, improve their health, and achieve better outcomes. Learn more at www.rehabupracticesolutions.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.